Hi, folks.
Morning.
Afternoon, hey, Jeff.
So, Jeff, where are you from?
The Seattle area.
Okay, and sorry, which company?
IBM.
IBM. Thank you. Yeah, have you been in tech meetings before? I can't remember.
I might have been in one of the very first ones, but I have not been in a while.
Okay, so when we get to roll call, I'll have you introduce yourself again.
Demetrios often comes in from IBM, but Jeff more often attends the GBs.
Okay, yeah, great. Glad to have you here, Jeffrey. Just giving you a heads up that when I do the roll call, I'll invite anybody who's new or hasn't been here in a long time since new members have joined to introduce themselves. So,
sure, thanks for the hospitality.
Sure. And I think I recognize Ashley from the outreach meetings. Ashley, have you been to a tech meeting before?
I have not. Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley. I joined the Linux Foundation last week, and I'll be working with you all moving forward.
Ashley, excellent. Yes, so we had
our
new PM person help, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So it's great to have you here.
Yeah, I'll ask you to do that again as more people join. When we get to the roll call slide, we'll have you introduce yourself again then. So
absolutely.
I think people are still in the process of joining over the next couple minutes. So
great.
Thanks for being here. All right, let's go ahead and share slides. All right, welcome to the Technical Advisory Council meeting. This meeting is part of the Conference Computing Consortium, which has the following culture, right? We try to set a culture where every member is welcome, including guests and observers in these meetings. This is a public meeting, and the fact that everything here is open to anybody who wants to learn about what the CCC is doing, especially the goals of the TAC, and provide us input. Every project meeting actually here is welcome. We're open, transparent, collaborative community, and we try to make the participation here be a harassment-free experience for everyone. This meeting is covered by the Linux Foundation's antitrust policy. I think most or all of you are familiar with it, but just in case, linuxfoundation.org/antitrust-policy is what we should all become familiar with if we're not already. So just a great pointer there. This is currently our agenda for today. I would hesitate to say it's lighter than usual, but that's usually a recipe for it filling all available time, so I won't say that. Are there any requests for changes to this agenda or the order? Going once, going twice. Right. If not, then we will proceed in this particular order. I suspect the only deep discussion might be on number 5. And I don't know if we will have anything that requires a vote other than minutes, meaning I don't know whether license scanning, there's any vote there, but we'll get to that when it's there. I suspect not, but we'll see. Okay, so let's do a quick roll call here. Do we have Accenture here? I do not believe so. I see Zongmin is here, so Ant Group is present. ARM, is Thomas here or somebody representing ARM? I do not see ARM here yet. Facebook, Eric or Shankran is back up? Not yet. Okay, Google, do we have Brandon or Dimitri? No, okay, what about Huawei? We have Howard? No, all right, Intel, Dan, I think I saw you here.
You do?
Okay, I'm here and Mike is here. And Mark, are you acting as a voting member in this meeting?
I'd rather not for today, thanks.
Okay, so it sounds like we're still at 4 unless I missed somebody who just joined.
Nope, that's
Stefano?
correct.
It's okay.
Yeah, I think we're just at 4 for now. I can keep
Okay.
an eye on it and I'll let you know if anyone joins.
All right, so we will skip the approval of minutes until that happens, although I don't know if Jethro is here, but I do want to say thanks to Jethro for chairing the first part last meeting. For those of you that were there, I was the IETF meeting that group that I chair was meeting right before us, and that meeting covered into the first half hour of the TAC meeting last time. And so I can't chair 2 meetings at the same time. And so thanks to Jethro for chairing the first half hour until my other meeting finished and I can switch over to this one. So I did see one request for a correction. So one correction was already made on the minutes. Thank you, Stefano. The other one was from Thomas, who said the asterisk need to be moved to his name rather than Michael's name. You see Thomas is primary now. So that was the only request for change. I don't know if that's something that can be done in the background or whatever, but that Thomas was holding his vote for that asterisk to move.
Yep, I'll go ahead and do that in the background.
Okay, great. All right, so let's come back to this as soon as somebody informs me that we have a 5th voting member present. So let's go ahead and move on to action items, since I think everyone had an action item is probably here. So let's just start from the top here. Number 1, Mike.
You know what I'm going to say?
You're going to say keep it on, same as.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Actually, I'm thinking number 2 should have been marked as done. Is that right, Stefano? Or is
Correct. In fact,
oh no, it was on here because you said that the discussion of how to make it work is still in progress. And last time you guys had a discussion about what the process was for individual projects like NARCs. If they wanted to have a document that got a DOI, what would be the process for that? Or is it just CCC white paper? So that's why I kept it on.
and so I actually did have a meeting. So we're changing the action item to having me apply for a DOI number for our white paper, the technical white paper. And I'll create, as I do that, I'll create some documentation for the future. So when folks say, we've also got a technical paper, we'd like a DOI number, they don't have to come to us and have us explain it to them verbally. We'll have some documentation on that. The process is pretty straightforward, but it does cost money, and it is a process in which they can reject your paper. So.
Okay, so it is always for docs, right? And so there's 2 categories. There's CCC white papers, like the 2 that we have right now. And so we need a process for those 2 and any future white papers we might do, because we already have things that need DOIs assigned. And then a contingency that says, okay, let's say in the future a project wanted to have one, what would the process for that be? And so you're going to cover all of that in a write-up or something. That's what I hear.
Correct.
Okay, got it. Okay. This next one is on the agenda, and so we will cover that one. Number 3, we can just cover later when we get to that point in the agenda. Let's see. I don't know if Steve, I think this one is still open. Is Steven, are you on the call?
He's not on the call, but I can speak for him.
Yeah, that's right. I think he told me earlier that he was not going to be able to make this meeting, so that's fine.
Right.
So go ahead, Stefan.
So I spoke with Stephen about this, and I think we just want to make sure that I minute some clarifications so that he knows what exactly he's going to the board to discuss, because I think I didn't take quite enough minutes for us to pull out what he was trying to do.
So I know one of the things was, one of the topics here was, I think we just passed enough general members that we need, that set of general members together now get 2 voting people on the board, governing board, rather than just 1. And how does that affect the TAC was part of the question here. So right now the general members don't have a voting member on the TAC, only on the governing board. And so one possible conclusion would be to say it doesn't have any effect. Another possible conclusion is that we change the bylaws to have the TAC have voting representatives, just like the governing board does, or some other approach. So that was, I think, the discussion. So
okay, excellent. I've noted that, and Stephen will bring that to the board in the next board meeting.
Yeah. So like for anybody else, right, Richard is currently the general member representative to the board, and going forward, he'll be one of, unless he gets replaced at some point in the future, right? Right now, Richard would be one of the 2 general member voting representatives on the board, right? And I don't know what the status is for that, but that's a governing board question. So I'm getting a second general member on the board. So
Yeah, and we'll be holding a general member meeting next week,
Awesome.
which I'm going to be sending the invite out today. And that's where we'll discuss the fact that we're about to have another election. We figured it would be good to know.
Stefano, a quick question on that one, which
Sure.
is the intention to allow that meeting to be open to all members, although of course general members are the only ones who can vote?
I don't see any reason why people wouldn't be welcome to come, even if they aren't a general member.
Okay, could you make sure you do invite everyone then, please?
Certainly. Yeah, I think what I'll probably do is send out an announcement to the general list specifically. So I'm sure that I hit that group. And
Yeah.
then I'll send out something to the general announcement list to let folks know that we're holding that.
Lovely, thank you.
okay, so number 5. This was to send out reminders. This is on the agenda too, so we can cover that one again. All right, number 6 and 7, since I don't have a separate slide on it, let's just talk about the current status of the attestation SIG here, even if it goes beyond these bullets here. So
Sure. So the LLC has been spun up. The group exists. I think the last step is for the board to just give their nod of approval. I don't actually know.
That's number 8, and so the board meeting was last week.
Oh, okay.
And the attestation code project
That's right.
was approved by the board as another CCC project.
That did happen.
And I think it was unanimous in the assent, so.
Right. Excellent. So then the LLC is spun up, the GitHub repository is there. Folks can start doing work and just contact me if anyone needs help in terms of scheduling or Zoom. I think I set up a Zoom for the group. Ava,
a meeting invitation, well, email has been sent out. I'm hoping it can be done in an ICS file as well. Dave, have we done the officers of that yet? I can't remember how that was working.
We did. So last time we did the vote on you're talking about the chairs?
That's it, yeah.
Yes, we did have both votes last time.
Good.
Well, so we are good there. And as Mike said, I think, I don't know if Ava's on the call, the series starts April 7th, if I remember right, for the SIG meetings.
I'm here.
So yeah, just summarize how often and when does it start and so on.
Plan was every 2 weeks, I believe, and
Starts the April 7th, yeah.
Yep.
7th.
At what time of day?
sorry, I'm having a little computer issue this morning. So give me a
10
minute to
a.m.
find it.
Pacific.
Gotcha. So the
Thank you.
outreach meeting, for anybody that's an outreach, because I know Ava is 2 hours before that. Okay. And so that one is open to all attendee or open to anyone, right? So, but it's specifically on the attestation topic. And so I assume that discussion will happen on the attestation at list. And +1 to Mike, if there's a calendar invite or something that can be created to show up on people's calendars, that would be lovely.
So there was a note about the OE attestation SIG on April 7th at 10 Pacific. Is there actually a separate one for the?
So that is different. The Open Enclave Attestation SIG is a separate entity from the CCC
misunderstood
Attestation
That's
Network.
my bad. Sorry.
Yep. Mike, I think you have not yet responded to the poll that I sent out to try and make sure that all of us can attend the inaugural, all the chairs can attend the inaugural one, which at the moment it is most likely.
I don't see an email from you on that. Maybe I've missed it. Could you maybe resend, please? Sorry.
It is in Slack. I'm trying to use Slack.
I don't monitor Slack because
Okay.
too many things.
I will send it in an email to you then.
Please, sorry, I'm trying to find it now.
So Can you clarify, is the 10 a.m. meeting on the 7th, is that the CCC attestation SIG, or is that not the CCC attestation SIG?
That is not the CCC attestation SIG.
Okay, so back up and cross that one off, unless anybody is interested in the Open Enclave attestation implementation. Do we have a date, or that's the poll that you were talking about?
That is the poll I was talking about. I
Okay,
put a couple dates out there last week, and in looking at it now, it's a little bit short notice, but I'm also really waiting for Mike's response on this. Optimal time will be Tuesday, March 30th at 9 a.m. Pacific.
And is that a private channel on Slack? Or maybe I'm just not seeing it.
No, it is the attestation channel on Slack. It's totally open.
Okay.
So that's
Figure out
5
how to
o'clock
do that.
on Tuesday.
I wonder, Slack has links. I wonder if somebody can drop a link into the Zoom chat here. Yeah, I can go out and email too. It's just that somebody has it handy.
Pardon my computer troubles again this morning for not having the link on this computer.
All right, fair enough. All right, any other questions on the attestation SIG then?
Well, I have a question for Ava.
Uh-huh.
One of the things you have down is a time you can't do on the 30th of March because we have the RSA recording for the second half of that. So
That is, the poll was probably, you're now correct. Dang it, this gets complicated.
sorry. I
Good
can
catch.
do the earlier one though, it turns out, which everyone else can do. So I'm just filling my doodle in at the moment.
Okay. And I got the link. It is coming into Zoom chat.
Awesome. Okay.
Right, I've voted. I can do all but the second one and the last one.
Perfect. I will send out a calendar invite right now for that first option.
Okay.
Lovely. Sorry about that. Sorry not to have noticed it.
All right. And so Ava, you're gonna send it to the attestation list or the TAC list or something else?
I can send it to the TAC list if that is the best bet. I don't think we have an attestation list for this yet. Stephanie, did you create one?
No, we had an attestation at list that we created long before the discussion of the SIG. And
Right.
I thought in the charter, we said we were just going to use that mailing list rather than setting up a new one. But
Oh, okay.
that's memory. So somebody correct me if I'm wrong. So
Yeah, I believe that's the way it was going to go, and I'm happy to rename it too if we want to. That's no
Okay.
problem.
I mean, it's already attestation at basically CCC.
I was going
right?
to say it
So-
can't get much more specific.
Yeah,
Yeah, we should
So-
probably notify the folks on the list, which is, I believe, most the Open Enclave folks, that we're commandeering the list, as it were, or broadening the scope, rather.
I think we, yeah,
I
somebody
say
correct
this
me if
as
I'm
someone
wrong,
who's
but
not
remember, I
active
think
on
we
that
did that
list.
because I think a lot of the CCC people, we saw a bunch of other joins on that list over the last couple months, and it's not all Open Enclave people
Oh,
or
great.
Red Hat people. I think there's probably a bunch of people on the call are on it, so.
Okay. Sounds
Waiting
good.
for some interesting discussion, and this is the trigger, so.
Sounds good.
I'm also saying this because if anybody's on the call and listening and is not on that list and wants to be on that list, please get on that list, right? Because I don't know that you need to send it to the TAC as long as we've had sufficient advertising of the attestation list, but it might not be harmful to also send it to the TAC, so. But hopefully the TAC has had ample opportunity to join the attestation list if they want to be involved in this topic, so.
And now I have a personal wrench to go deal with. That time slot just got clobbered by a vaccine appointment. I'll deal with this. Okay, thank you.
That's a nice kind of conflict to have, Ava.
Can you not take it from the vaccination center? Is that not?
All right, so Stefano, did you say that the LLC has already been created or that is in the pipeline right now? For number 7?
It's been created, yeah.
Okay, so 7 is done.
Correct.
And I just reported that 8 is done. That was the board meeting last week. So so next week was the wording from when the action item was given. So that was 2 weeks ago. So the board meeting was last week. All right. Last one, number 9. I think that one's done now too.
I did not. Has anyone else moved that to Markdown? If so, thank you.
Okay, guess not. All right.
So could we actually, let's take a break with number 9. Could we move that action item to Ashley? And can we also welcome Ashley to the call as
Oh, that's right.
a new member of our team?
I kind of skipped over that when we didn't have. Do we have quorum now?
Actually, I don't think we have
Because
quorum.
I was going to do that when we got to the slide, but we skipped over because we didn't have quorum. So let's go ahead. Let's go back and do that now. And so we got a couple people that are here for the, I don't know, either first time or for those that have joined in the last year, maybe the first time that you've been in a meeting. So let's have people introduce themselves. And so let's start with Ashley first. So go ahead, Ashley. Glad to have you here.
Hi, everyone. Ashley here. Excited to work together.
Tell us what your role is, and yeah.
Yeah, I'll be working as the project coordinator. Started last week, working alongside Stefano.
Yeah, so for those who aren't on the board voted to increase program management spend based on several events that we're planning and webinars and things like that. So we've increased the program management budget. Ashley reports to me, and we'll be working on confidential computing part-time.
Awesome. Welcome aboard.
Indeed.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So are both of you going to continue to be here at TAC meetings, or is that responsibility going to fall to one or the other of you? We love having both of you. So
we'll likely both be here for a while, and we'll start talking about dividing up tasks eventually.
Awesome. All right, great.
The other person I actually want to introduce is Dale. He's here from Berkeley. So he's part of the Keystone project. I spoke with him earlier. Wow, I want to say earlier this week, but it's a blur. And asked him to join the TAC meeting this week just to get a feel for how we do things here at the CCC.
Great. Dale, anything else you want to say to introduce yourself? Say hi to us.
Hi, I'm Dale. I'm very excited to join CCC. Thank you.
All right, glad to have you here. Glad to see representation from more of the projects. So, all right, so Jeffrey, introduce yourself again, Jeffrey. Jeff Bork. Jeff is on mute.
Is Jeff new? I think Jeff's been here before.
Well, right before everybody else joined, I was asking because he actually joined right before 7 o'clock, and he said that he was here a long time ago, but there's been a bunch of new members that have joined since then, and he hasn't been here recently. So I thought I'd give him another chance to introduce himself to all the people that have joined since then. So Jeff was an old member in terms of the TAC timeline. And not a new member, so or new attendee. So, okay, but it sounds like he doesn't have audio. So I think Jeff was from IBM, if I remember right.
Correct.
He is. That's correct.
All right. All right.
He is my alternate for the GB.
Okay. As opposed to Demetrius. So Demetrius
Who
is
tends
the
to be
alternate.
my alternate for this. Yeah, that's right.
All right. Awesome. All right. Is there anybody else who's here for the first time or that hasn't been here in over a year?
Sorry, I stepped away, but.
Oh, welcome back. We were just introducing yourself for you, so please go ahead.
No, that's quite all right. Yes, I've been collaborating with Mike from Red Hat on this since the early days before it was founded. Initially, when the group was forming, IBM was contacted initially, and as I was doing some due diligence, I reached out to Red Hat and found that they had the NRX project, which was directly applicable. And as the governing board rules prevent 2 companies from joining at the top tier level, we elected to defer and have Red Hat join as they had a project in hand. But as you can imagine, across IBM's business interests, there's many touch points and interests in this initiative.
Great. Thanks for the intro. Welcome back, I guess, TAC meeting. So glad to have you here.
Yeah, I've been working in and around open source for IBM for over a decade and have been involved in the spinning up of many other initial foundations and collaborations such as the CNCF and early work with Docker, et cetera. I was the chair of the Docker governing advisory board back in the very early days.
Great. All right.
Hey, Dave, I could probably introduce myself as well.
Uh-huh.
I did join the outreach group. I've been part of those sessions for a few weeks now.
Remind us who you're with, Mark,
TAC meeting.
for those who don't know.
Yeah, I come from ARM. I'll be representing ARM on the governing board. My background, I did work at Docker as well, but more in the biz dev side. We kicked off a program called Parsect, which is now part of CNCF, another security initiative, together with ARM. And now I sit on the ARM side, leading that program, which kind of led me to additional security connection points within ARM. So happy to be here. I'll try to attend these sessions just to get a feel for the technical discussions that are taking place. But we do have a team from ARM that will be representing us in these TAC meetings.
Great. Thanks, Mark and Jeff. Glad to have your expertise here. So I think we do have quorum now, since if I remember right, when we did the roll call before, Thomas joined just after that. And so I believe we have 5 now between Zongmin, Thomas, Dan, myself, and Mike. So that means that we can actually do the minutes approval. So Thomas, right before you joined, we were asking Stefano to move the asterisk in the background. So
Okay,
that has been
thank
done.
you.
that has now been done.
Yeah, apologies.
Refresh.
I sometimes forget about those asterisks, so they are
No
important.
worries.
So I appreciate you having me move that.
All right,
Yeah,
there
the
we
thing
go.
is that
So it's
last
on.
time we voted, so I sort of felt responsible for.
Yeah,
I see.
in
It's
fact,
been
I'm
moved
sure.
from Michael, and it shows up on Thomas now. And so, and the other one that at least 2 of us pointed out was this word here has been corrected to say Slack in 331. So several of us pointed that out. So those are the 2 corrections that were done. Given that those 2 corrections have been done, anybody else need more time before we call this to a vote? Out of the 5 voting members anyway. Anybody else is welcome to provide corrections, but eventually the approval has to be done by the voting members here. So, but if anybody else has corrections to make, please speak up. But otherwise, hearing none, then let's see. Anybody have an objection or need to abstain, say you aren't here or something, from approval of these minutes? Again, this is for those 5 people.
Nope.
Okay. Hearing nothing, then it then passes with the 5 votes in the affirmative. All right. Thank you all. Let's go back. I don't know, did we finish the set of action items? Did we get to the bottom? Yeah, because we were just talking about this one. We're going to leave on number 9. All right. And then there's no other, we finished all the questions around the CCC attestation SIG. Unless anybody came up with a new one, I'm going to keep moving on to the next topic. All right, so some updates from the outreach committee that affect the TAC. So see who's here. I don't think David Green is here, but we do have people that are active in the TAC. I was there. Ava's, of course, a TAC member. Ashley was there in the TAC meeting. So who'd like to, let's see, maybe Ava, since you talked about the unconference stuff, maybe you can talk about that part and anything else you want to chat about. So just tell us, because there was a question that came up about the TAC and whether stuff was appropriate for the TAC or not, but at least if you want to give us an intro.
Intro on the
unconference, and then anything else that's related to outreach that you want to be the reporter person on.
Okay, so the unconference we're discussing, and we're currently targeting June, now that Ash is on board and can help with some of this. The goal being get developers from our products together and encourage healthy discussions. For those not familiar with an unconference format, I'll be sending some resources out, hopefully by end of week, to both TAC and outreach lists, just sort of reading material on what is an unconference and what is the format of it, because it is certainly different than what folks who may have only gone to big technical conferences that are well structured are familiar with. The framing around it is facilitating a real-time creation of the content and the schedule day of by the attendees. So it's really whoever shows up gets to drive the agenda. And the facilitators are there to ensure and encourage that discussions happen and minutes are captured and people sort of get value out of the event. We're looking at using a combination of Discord and Slack to create this virtually. It's much easier to do in person, but I have seen some done virtually, and I think we could do it. And we're sort of looking for volunteers right now, folks who have experience. Ideally, facilitating unconferences would be the right kind of skill set. One doesn't need technical skills for the facilitator role. But then, of course, we need all the tech folks to show up to actually drive the agendas and build the content and do it. That's a short version. I'll pause there before moving on to any other updates.
Is there any asks for the TAC, or is this just, sorry, is there any requests for the TAC, or is this just an FYI to all of us who might want to come?
This is just an FYI for everyone who might want to come. The only request is if you or someone in your team or you know someone elsewhere in the world who has experience facilitating unconferences or things like this and think they would want to come join and help out in the organizing team, please DM or email me. And I'm thinking in particular of a couple of folks I know from, say, the cloud native ecosystem who've done this, who are kind of interested in security as well. Could be good for some cross-pollination, but my real focus is just I need probably 4 facilitators in total for this event to work.
Great. Okay. Anything else you want to speak to? Otherwise, you know, I can summarize and let other people fill in on like OC3. We had out of all the CCC projects and stuff in the pipeline, I think 5 of our projects actually had sessions at OC3, and so just wanted to ask, including representatives of the projects, right? I know a number of them are here on the call here. How did that go for you? Like the NARC session, did you find value? The Keystone session, did you find value? How did you like this conference? Should we do it again next year? Anything that we learned? So.
Yeah, so for the NARC side, we were very pleased with it. There's really good engagement. I thought generally the level of technical interest was excellent, and the fact that it was sort of preceded, it started off with some ground setting stuff, which meant we didn't need to go all over the stuff that we tend to do at the beginning of every every session we do, every presentation was really good. So I was very pleased with it. I thought there was some good, interesting business folks there as well. But yeah, good technical folks too. So I thought it was an excellent conference, really well run, very impressed with it. And they used Hopin, which is my favorite by far.
And Dale, I think you guys had a session there too. How did you get good feedback and things, or how did that go for you guys? Do you know? I don't know. Dale has audio. Okay. Anybody else from any other projects? Ava, any thoughts on how on the Open Enclave stuff? Was that also go well? I don't know how many attendees and stuff that we had. Stefano, do we actually have stats and things for how many people attended the different sessions and things? Is that available?
There is, and let me put that link in just a minute in chat.
Okay, we don't have to share it verbally or whatever, but if there are links to stats and stuff for people to look up, then just this.
Dave.
I thought this was great because it did let us highlight a bunch of projects, and we also got to see sessions from a bunch of other projects that you might think of as being other relevant things in the confidential computing industry, or even potential candidates for future donation to CCC if they're interested in doing that. So
for a live event, right? Content was not pre-recorded. I thought that to echo Mike's comment, the introductory sessions at the beginning really helped. I saw a lot of good conversations, speaking both from the Open Enclave perspective and the Microsoft perspective, since we also did sponsor it. We saw a lot of great content, a lot of great discussions and feedback. Felt it was, worthwhile, and would love to do something like this again.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, would you be interested in feedback that happens offline? Say, for example, I could collect from the Veracruz folks some of their.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well,
Okay.
I should say technically the should we do it again is owned by, I guess, outreach or whatever. But since this is really highlighting the projects and giving us visibility into non-CCC projects, that's why it's kind of a tech thing in terms of, since the projects fall under us, but all the outreach and event coordination stuff is under outreach. So probably both would be interested in that kind of feedback. So
Cheers.
yeah. All right, and did we hear anything? I guess I can't remember. We have like 6 major projects. I can't remember which one did not have the session. But I want to make sure anybody else that has feedback, love to hear it, how things went, anything we could do to improve stuff next year to give an even better experience, so we can continue to have this be a great experience for all newcomers and so on. So, okay, unless there's any other comments on OC3. The CCC webinar series. This is why recently the second meeting of the month for the TAC is the same day as the monthly webinar series that Outreach created, that starts at the same time as the TAC meeting is normally scheduled to end. So that's why we've been trying to end like a half an hour early or something on the second time of the month, instead of going 120 minutes. It's basically 90 minutes, so that those who are involved in, say, presenting can have time to switch over, get slides set up, and so on, without having to miss any of the parts of the TAC meeting. So I do want to allow us to try to end by there, as we've kind of been trying to do during webinars. So today is the Open Enclave version. We've had NARCs and Graphene in previous months. This is the current schedule. I think Veracruz is next month. After that, Auckland has an opportunity, unless they switch or whatever, and Keystone in June is kind of the upcoming pipeline.
Just a heads up on that one, Dave. The Project Veracruz, we're hoping to have that session at 8 a.m. PDT. So that would be a little bit earlier than what you have here.
Okay, that's good to know. So we may have to adjust the TAC meeting that time to only be, that's right, 60 minutes. And even then it would, some people would have to leave early. So thank you for the heads up. That's a month from today.
That's right.
Okay. Okay. Anything else from people who are at outreach meetings that need to be, that's news the TAC can use? Those are the top 3 that I can think of that affected the TAC. So those are all things that are specific to projects or which technical people would want to attend. So, okay, anything else? Going once, going twice? All right, moving on to the next topic. All right, so next topic, so the webinar question follow-up. So last week, just before I joined, you guys had a discussion, those who are here. I wasn't, but I listened to all the recording afterwards. So there was a document that was created, Mike had put in his comments, and the action item was for everybody to go and look at it offline and review stuff and add in stuff. And so I did that. And I don't know if anybody else did. If not, please go and do so. So second reminder here. But since there was some discussion, at least between Mike and me, I at least wanted to go into this, even if it's just a discussion between Mike and me with everybody else jumping in, please feel free. So, all right, so because we have comments here, I do want to spend some time here. Last week it was just Mike saying, hey, has anybody else reviewed it? But since since I reviewed it, I think there's a couple points I want to discuss here to see if we can give any action items, or how do we go forward in terms of what to put together here? Because these are the questions that came from webinars. Some of these questions are things we can choose to not put in any FAQ, and I think there's one here that Mike and I are both arguing do not belong on our FAQ, and that's number 6 here. Right? Could you summarize add-on TPM chip versus integrated into a CPU option? And TPMs are outside our scope, and I said I agree, this is a question for TCG, not for the CCC per se, because it's specific to TPM chips, right? And so I propose, yeah, it's great to keep it on the list of questions that we've gotten, but it's not something we put on the website. Now, somebody else feel free to disagree, but I think Mike and I are in agreement on number 6. So and there's other ones that are very much about either follow-up questions on our white paper or whatever. So this one is one that Mike and I have had a number of discussions on across the comments here. So You can see a bunch of, show all for replies and things. And so what's the minimum number of entities that require trust? In other words, what's the minimum number of entities in the TCP? Mike had two different axes here. The number of entities to which a trust relationship needs to be formed and the number that need to form a trust relationship to another. I personally found that hard to follow. I don't know if other people found it easier to follow.
Yeah, I found it hard to follow. I'm just trying to be very explicit, but I was kind of basing it on principles that I've outlined elsewhere, which isn't really helpful for this. So yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So I know Mike and I have already responded. I'm trying to catch everybody else up on this discussion here. I suggested that a fact type of question would be worded something like, what's the minimum number of entities that the owner or originator of data needs to trust to keep that data confidential? So maybe you want to wordsmith that, but something like that would be slightly more precise wording than the number of entities that require trust, which is kind of an ambiguous phrasing. So this one, I think, is a thing that we've talked to, or at least that Microsoft have talked to. I imagine that a number of you have talked to the same point. And with a question worded similar to that, an example wording that we then was discussing would be two, right? One's own admins, like yourself, right? If yourself is an organization, then you have a set of individuals, let's say, and the TE hardware manufacturer. Some solutions or variations might require more than two, and the owner can always choose to trust more than the minimum, right? But what is the minimum was the question, is you can't get any smaller than two, right? You can't get your own admins out of the TCP, and you can't get your TE hardware manufacturer out of the TCP. And so Mike had a follow-up which said, well, what about whoever writes the runtime library and things? Because you're running some software that software is inherently in your TCP, okay? Unless you've written it all yourself, okay? And so I responded saying, well, technically you don't have to write it yourself, you just have to vet it, right? If it's open source, you have to say, you have to get confidence that the code is correct, regardless of who wrote it, okay? And that's how you can get who wrote it out of the TCP, which is if you do the security analysis yourself. Now, of course, you can choose to outsource that security analysis to any other, security analyst, and then you're choosing to put them in the TCP too. So whether it's the author or the better.
I would also argue that in the case of open source, even if you don't explicitly do it, you may have such trust in the open source community in a distributed way that you're happy to trust it. But that's quite a complex argument, which is why I wrote a book about it.
Yeah. So my point is the minimum is still two. In practice, it might be three or whatever, but what the question was phrased is what's the minimum? So I think it's a fine question. It would be useful to add the question to the fact, as my personal opinion, interested in what other people think. And that's why we're kind of iterating on different ways to answer it. Technically the answer would be two, but it might be helpful to elaborate to say, and here's example cases where it might be more than two, or where you might choose to have it be more than two. Like if you outsource your security vetting to the entire world of the community, open source community, or to a particular security analyst firm or whatever. So, okay. So far this has been a discussion between Mike and me. Do other people agree that this is a good thing to put into the fact? Are we talking in the right directions here? Do you think this is the wrong style of answer? Do you like the style of answer? Interested in hearing from the rest of the people on the call. So anybody else that has an opinion?
I like the direction that you're going with it. I think a concise answer about here's the minimum, it's these two parties, and then a little bit more just to be complete about these software dependency issues that you were just discussing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I would like to add, if we're going to talk about what trust we're talking about, we need to be very clear about what those things are. And we generally mean confidentiality and integrity.
Yep.
And you may trust those or not. So there may be up to 4 different trusts. Yeah. It just gets interesting quite quickly. That's all. You can do it careful about it. It's
entirely fine with me if you want to paste your book in there too.
I'm not sure my publishers would be too happy. But...
so anybody else have positive or negative feedback? Right now, the consensus would be leaning towards saying, well, let's put it into the FAQ. And between Mike and I, we might be iterating on various text unless somebody else wants to jump in and contribute to actual wording. So. Okay. So far, I'm going to take this as...
Can you post?
Please continue, so.
Can you post the link in Slack
Uh,
so I can read it later?
This one? Okay. Since I'm projecting, I will post it into the chat. If somebody else wants to copy it into Slack or something, feel free. But here's the link. It's in the minutes and slides from previous meetings, but this is far easier for you to find. So, all right.
Okay, good. Thanks, Dave.
All right. And so, Stefano, you had the action item of sending out a reminder to people. Can you just make sure that the link here also shows up in the minutes for this meeting?
Sure.
Okay.
Will do.
Okay, so that one sounds like, yeah, we'll come up with some fact wording that takes into account this discussion Mike and I were just having, and anybody else who wants to jump in, please feel free to do this. But I'll probably be, if it's okay with you, Mike, we'll probably be replacing this text with text more like what we've been having in this discussion here. So.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely straw person text to start, get the questions done.
And I appreciate you jumping in and being the first person to kick stuff off. Has been very helpful.
No problem.
So this one I'm interested in people's feedback on. So this one I threw in something, and I'm interested to know if you guys agree or disagree with different points that I was throwing out here. So what are some emphasis on the word mature use cases, right? Because a lot of times we talk about things that are emerging, and you might think that depending on where you sit, whether you think that cloud computing, confidential, virtual machines or whatever else is a mature use case or an emerging one, that might be a matter of debate or how you define the term mature. But there's other things that are mass market, have been out there for a while, that I claim fit into, at least I believe, I'm not an expert on these other technologies, but my belief is they probably fit within the confidential computing definition. And so here's a straw man for people to beat up on or add others or say, no, that doesn't fit in or whatever. Because what are some mature use cases? The intent of this question, if we put this in as a fact, is to say confidential computing, we've kind of been using it for a long time now, right? We're just now giving it a name and giving it other dominant use cases like cloud computing, for example. Okay, but so it's not new.
Sorry. Okay.
No, I was just going to mention what those three are, but if you got a comment here that's general, go ahead.
No, put those in first, and I'll.
Okay, gotcha. So I wanted to first. So here's the straw man, right? So repeat the definition of confidential computing, right? The protection of data and use by performing computation in a hardware-based trust execution environment, right? So that's the definition. So what are things that are out there already widely deployed in the world that might fit into that category of performing computation in a hardware-based trusted execution environment, right? And notice I left off TPMs on here because we tried to make it be more general purpose rather than, ROM. If it's only ROM and not programmable, then we didn't want to focus on it, and it's sort of a matter of debate. So that's why I didn't put TPMs into the list. But that's based on previous TAC discussion. In our little semi-Venn diagram, TPMs are kind of like halfway in, halfway out because they're not programmable. But other things might be programmable that are on the list here. And so some example mature cases that might be seen as falling within that definition include secure elements, such as the chips used on credit cards and debit cards in the payment industry. These often conform to global platform standards, such as the GPTE standards. Feel free to debate, but my understanding is that one solidly fits within the definition of confidential computing. It's just used on secure elements rather than general processors. But
I'm not sure I do agree with that.
Free.
But
that's why I'm putting this out here to say, do people agree or disagree?
So I think that what I'm just looking at the white paper now to see exactly what we said.
I don't think we say on these. That's why there's a follow up here. So
I think the first thing is we talk about programmability. We shied away from saying general programmability, but I think we generally meant that. And the other thing is how testable in the way that we mean by testing are some of these use cases. And my final point, I think is an important one, is okay.
Please finish, then I'll comment.
My final point is we spent quite a lot of time as the CCC setting out our stall as to things that we think we should have our dirty little fingers in, right? And as soon as we start listing other things, including global platform, we are diluting where we're going, even if we're just giving them as examples. And I think there's a real danger to that. If we are going to stick to what our core, interesting stuff is, which is generalized compute for testable things which meet our general standards, then these seem dangerous even to be given examples?
So I think the main argument that you're making that I might be convinced of is to say, let's not put this question into a fact. Okay, even if the answer here were correct, which we can debate as a separate question, it might be better to not put this question in the fact. That's kind of the meta point that I think you're making, and I think that's a decent argument to not put this in the fact, right? It's a fine TAC discussion to have, but maybe we don't want to put it in the fact.
Yeah, maybe a better way. What mature use cases are there for the things that the Confidential Computing Consortium thinks it's about? I'm not sure how we phrase that. Not like that.
Right. So
But,
technical point, I did want to respond to your points about the secure element stuff, but I think what I'm leaning towards saying is the point should be moot as far as fact, because we probably, whatever the answer is, even if we agree to disagree or we agree to agree, right, then there may be an argument to say, even if we agree, we wouldn't want to put it into the fact. So anyway, on A,
so there's two vendors speaking. Let me speak. My answer to this question as a buyer is that there's all this, like, you know, data analytics and computation and healthcare computing. You know, that's the mature use cases. That's your use cases. It's not, you know, I mean, because you know what I'm saying, Dave? I mean, whoever's reading this answer is some C-level dude in, you know, some big, you know, healthcare company, Wall Street, and so on, right? So they want to see like that level answer, not a hardware engineer's answer.
You're not looking for solutions. You're looking for use cases that we think are quite well defined. That's a great answer. That's very good.
Yeah. So Thomas, Thomas, those are in the outreach white paper right now. So I agree with you, but those are already in their outreach white paper. So I guess one question would be, are there things in the outreach white paper that we want to elevate into a fact?
Yeah, that might be useful, just cut and paste.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, anybody else want to jump in on this one? Thank you, Thomas. So we don't want to monopolize this conversation. We want everybody to be able to, if you have an opinion, please speak up. So you have time. Okay.
I think this is Richard, Dave. I think key management should be in there. I mean, we've been deploying that for years.
Yeah,
that's programmable.
That's a great point.
That's also in the CCC deck that was presented to Gartner last year, actually. So if we can put out some use cases associated with the information that we presented to Gartner last year, that would be consistent as well.
I mean, this is exactly the sort of question that we want the the being formed UAC to answer, right?
I'm hearing you, and as we speak, I'm minuting the discussion that was had last night for presentation to the board, Mike. So challenge me on that on the 6th of April or 8th of April, whenever.
Okay, so I'm hearing an emerging consensus to take the list of use cases that of which I think key management was one of them, Richard, but
it was,
in the outreach white paper right now, and elevate those into a quick fact answer that could then point to the outreach white paper for longer discussion. Okay, I think that would be a great approach. Of course, we might carefully craft the wording of the question to match that answer, but that's perfectly fine. Yeah. I just wanted to respond briefly to Mike's technical point on this one, since you said, Mike, that you pulled up the white paper and had the little table in front of you. There's a number of criteria, if you remember, and so there was the 3 top ones that meant the definition, and there was other ones that were optional, that were encouraged, and that vendors compete on. Have. And so you'd mentioned things like attestability, which is in the optional category, and so on. And so that's why if you only looked at the top 3, I claim that this one would be in the top 3, and it does not fall into some of those other optional ones. But I get your main point that says the things that we use as CCC want to evangelize is the larger set. So it doesn't change this consensus opinion, but that's why I still think that this isn't in here, even though it doesn't have those other optional attributes. So anyway.
I absolutely get you. This is one of those tricky ones. I mean, I would have had at least 1 or 2 of those optional ones as required, but lost the vote. So that's fine. It's all good.
Yeah. So I guess my point is, I guess the conclusion is the text here I'm going to ignore, because now we have another emerging consensus, unless somebody else wants to add to or argue against the emerging consensus here as to what to put in effect. Okay. I'm going to take that as direction unless somebody jumps in and said no, bad direction. Okay. Next one was a question about homomorphic encryption. Can homomorphic encryption and this is in the TAC white paper, we have a table or discussion about the relationship between TEEs and homomorphic encryption and TPMs as an example because it was frequently asked questions. So adding this as a frequently asked question is probably a fair thing to do because that's why we put that table into the white paper to begin with, because it was a frequently asked question even before the consortium was created. So if you're using homomorphic encryption, do you still need to use confidential computing? Mike started this one with the one sentence version here that I then augmented. So Mike had said, TPMs confirm, this is the TPM point. So I tried to summarize the discussion that we, the TAC, had when creating that table. I may have gotten stuff wrong here, so please feel free to correct or wordsmith or whatever, but this is the summary of the discussion, because I know some of you joined the TAC after that discussion happened. But a bunch of people on the call were here and can correct my memory here. So TPMs provide data integrity only for data which is recorded inside them, and then I just augmented and continued, but not for the data that is passed to a TPM for purposes of encryption, signing, or measuring. Ensuring such integrity requires the component passing such data to the TPM to also have integrity protection, such as being implemented in ROM. So here, I think what we concluded is a TPM is not a TEE in the full sense of computing, but it could be a component of one. You put a TPM together with a thing that sends it to things that sends it to data, and the combination of those could form what we might call a TEE.
Is it going too far to say something like the limitations of the TPA of a TPM is what gave rise to the TEE model?
I don't think it's just the limitations of TPMs. And there's limitations of other things like HSMs, FPGA. There's a number of ways of doing this. TPMs certainly were one of the drivers. Might be worth adding, but I'm wary again of spending too much time explaining why TPMs aren't what we care about.
Right. Yeah. All right. So I'm trying to get open discussion here, just so that if people have comments or wordsmithing, then your next action item is to go and add comments or suggest text into this document or whatever, or to argue that we should not put it into the FAQ, which would be the other possibility. So.
I think it comes up often enough. Some wording would be useful. I'll try to set aside some time to chime in there.
Okay.
Dave, quick question. Is there somewhere in the text that distinguishes client side versus service side, cloud side usage of TEs?
Not at present. I don't believe there's anything in the white paper in this section that does that.
Like the typical C-level question I hear is that, so is my whatever next gen Intel, whatever, like, on my laptop, will that have, a TEE, right? And so the next following question then was, well, what's the difference between that chip and my TPM chip, right? And I'm always at loss. Okay, like, what do I say? TE is the next gen TPM.
Don't go there, Simon.
Okay, just pausing in case anybody else wants to weigh in on the TPM discussion.
Yeah, but there are use cases for TEs within laptops. They're different to the use cases for TPMs within laptops. TPMs.
I get that. I get that. This is an FAQ we're doing, right?
Yes.
Or is it not? Yeah, this is no. Mike, don't answer me.
Yeah, I know. I know that. I'm just trying to work out a way of saying it.
Yeah.
I know you get it. And maybe this is partly one of those. Once we've got a decent set of use cases, we can use that to differentiate some of the things that fit and which don't fit.
Yeah. So some of this we might already have language. I did not go back and look in the white paper to see if there were sentences that could be copied, but there might be some text that's in there that you might be able to put in here. In the TAC white paper. All right, anybody else want to weigh in on the TPM discussion? Anybody that hasn't spoken up? Okay. So the other half of the question, which might be broken into two questions, which was the relationship to homomorphic encryption. Are they, can homomorphic encryption provide data integrity, or are they malleable by design? If you're using homomorphic encryption, do you still need to use confidential computing? So here's my straw man. This one is me for people to beat up on. Homomorphic encryption is a way of performing certain types of computation on encrypted data so that, for example, it can be done at a point in the topology that never gets unencrypted data. It still requires protecting the other point in the topology that encrypts the data and decrypts the results of computation, and confidential computing techniques can be used there. Even that's one point. Second point, even in the place where even in the place where homomorphic encryption is done, meaning the computation part on encrypted data, that's probably a homomorphic, yeah, it's probably a confusing phrase. Homomorphic encryption itself does not provide assurance that the correct operations were performed, e.g. addition versus multiplication, right? This is actually a key point that Mike brought up at the beginning of the discussion, right? And must be paired with other techniques such as attestation to get such assurances. So anyway, that's my straw man text. Feel free to wordsmith and beat it up or whatever. So, and for anybody who's new, there's a homomorphicencryption.org that hosts at least annual workshops or whatever. And so a year ago now, they asked me on behalf of the CCC to come and attend their workshop and talk about that. And so I'm kind of a liaison between the two organizations right now, just because when they host workshops, they happen to have those in Redmond. So it's real easy for me to be there in person. So because they host, the organization hosts them on the Microsoft campuses. And so that was just before COVID hit last year that they had the workshop. So that's why I took the action item to write up this here as a straw man. But if others have opinions, feel free to correct or beat it up or whatever. So, okay. Nobody else has any comments on that one. Let's check any other ones to see if we agree that they should be in the FAQ or not. So what's the relationship between CCC and fill in the blank other organization? I took a shot at the IETF point, and I see there's at least 3 of us IETF folks on the call here, between maybe more. Yeah, because I think both Thomases have been in IETF calls, and Eric and myself and folks. And so here's my IETF answer. IETF publishes general purpose standard specifications, but does not do code. The CCC is a home for open source code projects, including ones implementing IETF specifications related to confidential computing. As such, the organizations are complementary. And I would welcome anybody else filling in a statement about any other org they would like. So,
yeah, I'm not sure that IETF would be very happy about you saying they do not do code. You'd probably find a better word than that. But yeah,
I would welcome input from Eric or Thomas or anybody else who's been active in IETF culture. So
you could use the word implementation maybe rather than code.
Well, it hosts hackathons, right? But it doesn't really have a home for them. It's not like it has an LF series LLC or something. So
the CCC is not publishing specifications, right? Technical specifications.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one thing we could emphasize, Dave, that many of these organizations, IETF, definitely TEEP and RATS, FIDO, they have their key attestation spec, and of course the TCG has a gazillion specs. And the other thing that's worth stating, in anticipation of answers, is who is going to be doing a compliance checking, right? So somebody will say, well, is CCC going to be a body that will issue compliance, stamps that this particular TEE, so that's another question that I guess the answer is no, right? CCC is not going to do compliance.
Well, I have a very interesting one about that, because I'm aware of a vendor who's thinking about coming to the CCC and saying, we think that this meets your requirements, and if it does, you should say it does. And I think that's a really interesting thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So Thomas, we've never actually said whether we will or not. It's not a discussion we've had yet. So this is a great thing for us to tee off. I think it is something that I think Ava and I have had discussions about that, and my opinion is I wouldn't mind if the CCC wanted to do that. I mean, one of my experiences is that I was involved in the OCF, which is, you know, it's a IoT organization that does schemas for all kinds of, you know, consumer IoT devices and things. It's the merger between a bunch of other organizations, including UPnP Forum, Fair Hair Alliance, OIC, and the Allseen Alliance. The four of those merged and became OCF. And so in that organization, they do a number of different things, which includes specifications and code and compliance testing. And the testing suites that then might be done by various testing labs and things, you know, run by testing labs and things, right? And so out of those different things for confidential computing, right, which organization takes care of each of those parts, right? So for like specifications, arguably there's these other things in this list here between, you know, IATF and other things for less general purpose stuff. Certainly TCG and things have specs that are relevant here. So far the CCC has chosen to not go there. But the other case is the biggest gap, as you point out, is, you know, the compliance testing is we don't have a compliant, we don't even have the notion of a compliance requirements, right? Should we? If there's a compliance testing suite, there might be a project for that. So my opinion is I would love to see that, but that's me personally. So
I think it's really, really dangerous.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, the number of vendors is small who are going to be doing this. I can name 4. I can name 3 with 2, which are, to be clear, AMD, Intel, and IBM, with 2 others, ARM and RISC-V orgs, which don't actually produce silicon themselves.
I think you're answering a different question than the one that I've asked, that I am.
Okay, so what are you suggesting we say is compliant or not compliant?
So implementation of, because Thomas's question came up in the context of standards, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, Thomas. I'd say
that's right. So typically,
if you have an implementation of the each spec, is your each spec implementation in your open source project, is that compliant to the IETF spec? To the IETF
okay. No, I'm much happier about that. I thought we were talking about saying whether a TE instance could be.
No, because
I'm much happier.
I'll give another example here.
Yeah.
Let's say that we build something in the attestation group over time, and we build an implementation of a cloud native service that performs hardware attestation, for example, and then other, some companies, some vendors choose to run that as a product, and they may make some changes to it, as often happens when you take something from a pure open source to a product. We could then provide a reference guide that says this is how you test compliance to the open source product we built. Is this vendor implementation or vendor backend or vendor extension still compliant and interoperable with all the other vendors who are doing the same thing on the same open source project? This is something that I've seen in plenty of other open source bodies which produce a body of code which is thus extensible or has a pluggable backend.
Yeah, no, I'm much happier. That makes a lot of sense. I'm just misunderstood. Okay. I'm much relieved.
So I can throw another one, and I don't know if this is answered somewhere. I'm laughing because somebody's going to ask me, well, is it FIPS 140 compliant? Like, is that particular, where do you start to answer that question, right?
Okay, well, that is
the CCC is the wrong.
We need to decide whether to engage with the FIPS folks about what it would mean to say something was FIPS compliant.
And
right. I'm just throwing this out because
to extend the
stuff there's a question there as well. Should the CCC ever be in that position, or is that up to, if a customer, a purchaser of some product or solution is asking, is this FIPS compliant? It's really up to the vendor who they have a relationship with.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I think the question is whether the CCC should work with the FIPS body to help define what it would mean to make something FIPS compliant, and then a vendor would work with a FIPS lab So we wouldn't be doing the compliance testing. I don't suggest that we become a FIPS lab. It's a heck of a thing. But I think we might be part of helping define what it means for FIPS to be applied to TEs or implementations in TEs.
So here is another thought. Do you think consortium owns defining what a hardware TE should be?
And that's the thing I think is very, very dangerous.
Yeah, we spent a little bit of time in the table that Mike and I were referring to that had the 3 criteria and other optional criteria and so on, or at least other criteria that are recommended, right? And I think I agree with Mike that it's dangerous to do that. I mean, we kind of did some of that, which I think was great work, and I don't know that we can do any better than that. So
even going so far as defining an API that we think TEs should implement really feels more like the IETF's purview than ours.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking about API as what are the security guarantees the hardware TE should provide for the software to run on and for the users to trust.
Gotcha.
Right. I mean, when I look at the consortium's website,
one of the things this is going to hit,
but they're all built on it for a specific architecture. But
can I?
One of the things this is going to hit is the SIG topic. And what I mean by that is we're talking FIPS 140 compliance. We're and I know this is just an example, but we're talking about full stack from optical level up to the APIs which are going into the chip. Certainly the SIG for AAA was talking about the network transport protocols as well as what would be needed to get into the TEE chip. So we got to differentiate between the relying party and the full stack that it has to understand in order to do interrupt testing and the interface to the TEE. And they're very different things. I think the real key here is the IETF can help with interface specifications. But if we start to get into what's needed for the full stack interoperability, we do have to think about the full device and not the chip when we're answering this question.
So may I make a suggestion, which is this, I think, goes beyond what the FAQ is about. And I think it's we should table these as discussions for the TAC to come up with some ideas and then take them to the GB. And it sounds like we've got a number of them.
Yeah. I mean, I let this go because other people were speaking up. And so I appreciate everybody wanting to jump into this one. I love seeing the energy here. So thank you, Naveen, for jumping in. Thank you, Eric, for jumping in. Please continue this discussion, whether it's on the list or whether it's in comments in the document here. Love the energy. So all of your comments are welcome. So yeah, please follow up here. And so those of you who just spoke up, thank you. That's why I was not interrupting. I thought this was awesome discussion, the type of stuff that we should be doing in the TAC. I agree with you, Mike, that some of this went beyond what's in the FAQ, but like Thomas's question about, should there be compliance testing stuff, I think is a great question. It's outside the scope of the FAQ, but it's actually a great TAC discussion. So.
No, I'm exactly with you. I'm just saying, I think we're not going to get this decided now. I want to make sure that we do table it. That was just the request.
Yeah, so let's keep that as a separate topic. And I may even put that as a separate agenda point on something, because I think that is a great discussion. It just started here. I want people to think about it and be prepared to discuss it. I don't know, maybe next meeting or something. So I'm going to maybe continue on this for about another 6 minutes or so, and I'll give the last 10 minutes to the license scanning topic. And so, or maybe at least 10 minutes there. So I want to stop this by 20 after the hour at the latest. But I guess this is a call if anybody wants to write up a quick answer for the relationship to any other organizations. So for example, there might be a frequently asked question of what's the relationship between the CCC and say trustedfirmware.org. If say Thomas or somebody wanted to do a little, 2 or 3 sentence paragraph about what's the difference between CCC and trusted firmware, or anybody else that has something on here, right? Ava, CNCF, anybody else that has experience with one of these orgs. If you have something that would make sense in a FAQ, please take an action item for yourself to fill in something. So yeah, thank you, Dan. I see you doing it right now. So that's great. So I see Dan's still editing. So I'm going to go on to the next one here. But Dan, if you want us to jump back to that one, that's fine. So
yeah, just one other thing that occurred to me there is a separate task is there's potentially a lot of other open source projects or organizations that are using using technologies that we want to accelerate. So it might be a nice outreach activity to try to catalog all of those.
Yeah. If you can put something together that we can get to consensus on, that sounds great.
No, I was trying to give that to somebody else to do. I was doing there with the outreach committee.
It's a great question to ask the outreach committee, but most of the outreach committee is not present on the call. So
okay.
Okay. Way to shift the action item. Okay. So let's see if we can take maybe one more of these if it's quick here. What's the most challenging unsolved problems, technical problems faced by CC today? Are there limits around data sizes? So Mike, I think you took the straw man here. Do you think that this one makes sense as a FAQ, or do you think it makes sense for us to discuss but not put in the FAQ? Which way did you have in mind when you put in something here?
I don't know. I think there's I think the clock possibly, maybe both.
So you say
I think it's useful stuff. I mean, it needs to be written better than it is here. Again, these are straw persons, but I think these are both useful things. Again, I defer to others, but that's my thinking.
Okay. Anybody else want to argue for or against this being in the FAQ? I can go either way on this one. I was the one who argued in a previous tech meeting that having some type of outreach to academia is a good thing. And I think this question may have come from an academic questioner. I mean, somebody in the research community, not necessarily a university, but somebody in the research community. So, okay, well, people can think about it. All right. Your points are fine, Mike. I think maybe wordsmith or whatever. But anybody else want to jump in on this one? Otherwise, we'll move on. Okay. Let's see. There's a bunch of other questions here. Let me call time here and just say, please continue the discussion by reviewing the document. And I think we'll go on to the license scanning discussion here that we kind of just touched on last meeting before I joined, and I want to give a couple more minutes here for actual discussion here. So, Stefano, I took the updated document that you sent me, and I believe it is this one. And so I wanted to give Stefano some time to talk about this, if you want to do that.
Sure. Yeah, so this goes over, I think we've already talked about the license scanning stuff quite a bit, but we wanted to see a document that basically just put it all into plain English. So I had that document sent out to the voting members so that they could see the official pricing, which I think we've discussed on the call before. It's pretty low. I think it's 10 grand for the year. So the TAC has those funds approved. If we agree that this, that what's described here, the deliverable sounds like something we'd like to have for our projects, then we just need this group to say that they'd like to spend the funds on that, and we can move it forward.
So the version we're projecting here is the redacted version that doesn't have, pricing information on it, but it has, here's kind of everything that they get. And so not everybody on the call has seen this before. And so that's why I want to leave it up on the screen here for everyone to have visibility to ask questions and things, because we do value everybody's input on this one.
And I believe, did Steve Winslow do a presentation too to this group, or was that to the board? I think it was to the board.
I think we got a presentation.
Okay.
I can't remember either because I was in both meetings. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we got one sometime December-ish.
Right. I believe Stephen Wally's phrase was, "This is a no-brainer." So I don't think there's a lot of discussion to be had here, but I think if folks feel like we should move forward with this, we should agree on it here so that when the line item shows up on our budget, we're not surprised.
So Mike is the treasurer. What's our current status, right? This is currently not approved in any budget, correct? It would require a vote to do approval, is that right?
I believe so, by the GB, but I think the GB just needs to make it happen.
I think they passed the buck off to us and said,
yes.
let us know if this is something you want to do.
Okay, in which case, if we're happy with that, I think it just goes through.
So meaning, Stephen's not on the call, but my recollection is that, hey, outreach, you have a budget, as long as it's within these parameters, you're good. Hey, TAC, you have a budget, as long as these parameters, it's good. Is this something that requires a board vote or just a TAC vote?
Just a TAC vote.
Okay.
And if you scroll down a little bit, it describes the fact that they're going to do these scans for all of our projects. Steve Winslow, being a smart lawyer, did put the caveat in, he's assuming that these projects are not the size of the Linux kernel, but if assuming they're not, and they are reasonable sized projects, he will do that scanning.
So we've now have a 7th project in the pipeline. It's actually, which is the attestation is now a code project that has gone through and has a series LLC. Should that be added to this list?
Up to this group. I'm sure that code base is small enough where Steve would be happy to add that.
Specifically 0, so
it's
currently I believe it's about to be a markdown file.
Just if we want to vote on this, I want to make sure we all agree on what we're voting on. So
sure. Yeah, and I'll provisionally say that Steve would add that to the list.
Okay, so are people comfortable coming to an actual vote on this? Because if so, then we want everybody's input, but only the voting members get to cast the votes. But some of the voting members can be heavily influenced by input from anybody on the call, whether you're even a member or not. So. But particularly we have people that are representatives from the projects on the call, and the most valuable input would be people from these actual projects, right? So if you're affiliated with, Oclam or Keystone or Veracruz or Graphene or whatever, we care what you think here in terms of how we should vote. So, okay. Well, if there's no objections, then I think I would like to call this one to a vote so we can actually make some progress on this one. So if people are okay with that one, are people okay with going to a vote, with a vote being, if I understand right, this is one flat cost for the TAC and it covers this set of things.
Correct.
Okay. So let me flip back to the roll call thing. But again, if somebody has comments on this, please feel free to speak up, even if you're not on this list here. So since this one is, so the voting process that I use is, if it is easy to reverse or correct afterwards, then we just do a vote of acclamation, like for minutes. If it is something that's difficult to reverse, then I do a roll call vote, so that we make sure that if your audio or something isn't working at the time, then we still get that recorded as an actual affirmative or whatever. So I usually pick a random point in a random direction. So let me arbitrarily start with maybe Zongmin and go upwards. So Zongmin, you are here. Would you like to cast a vote on partitioning, what is it, 10K for license scanning for CCC projects?
Correct.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Zongmin, if you're there, yay or nay?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Giuseppe, I don't think Giuseppe was here. Okay, Red Hat.
Yes.
Okay, Microsoft, yes. Intel, Dan?
Yes.
Okay, Huawei, I don't think is present. Did Google join us? Facebook? And ARM?
Yes.
Thomas, okay, so we got 5 yeses. I believe that means the vote passes. And that is now an approved budget item. And so action item goes to our treasurer to make sure that that is now a line item, and also to Stefano to put the stuff into motion.
Sure. I can assure Mike it'll be a line item.
Thank you very much.
In terms of, just so folks know, even though we've already voted, we'll send this information out to the projects so the projects can address any concerns. We'll also send it out to the Technical Advisory Council. And at any time, if you feel like it's no longer necessary, you don't want to do it, it's very easy for me to simply tell Mr. Winslow he doesn't need to do this anymore.
Okay, and tell us again about the process. When a scan is done, what happens with the scan results? Who is that actually sent to, and who has visibility into it?
Right, so the first person it will be sent to is the project in sort of the same manner of any security disclosure. It's treated in the same way where we contact the project first. Once the project is made aware of what the license scan said, if they give us permission, we'll then share it with the technical advisory council.
Okay.
There's generally never a reason for them not to, but it is their prerogative.
So I wonder, is it something that we want to, so right now we have our list of things that are guidance for doing the annual reviews of projects. Is it something that we want to add as another bullet? Because right now the bullets are basically organized as, here's a set of things. If something has changed or there's something to say, include this in your report. Now, don't forget this topic here. It's not a requirement that it be in the annual report. It's a set of, it's like a checklist of, hey, is anything to talk about here, anything to talk about here, anything to talk about here. Should we add this to that list of bullets?
Yeah, I'll take an action item to add that to the list of bullets, is just to review any code, any license scanning.
Okay. And so for anybody else, what we're talking about is in the GitHub repository for confidential computing governance. There is a markdown file here that is the annual project review stuff somewhere in here. Anyway, one of these files. So it might be inside the project progression policy. So anyway, Stefano has an action item to generate a pull request against this repo. So, all right, thank you. Anything else on license scans that people wanted to ask before we move on? I think we're about close to the end of the agenda here. So yep, we're now into any other business. So we got about 3 minutes left before I claimed we would try to close the call. So any other topics that somebody wanted to raise or things that would be on the agenda for next time?
I'd like to take up diversity, civility, and inclusion planning in the next TAC meeting.
Okay, can I assign you as the person to lead the discussion?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Yep, that is one of our topics, but having a discussion leader or somebody do that is great. Thank you for stepping up. Okay, Stefano, as long as you captured that. Any other topics or requests for meeting and agenda topics for next meeting? If not, then we can go ahead and end here. And just as a reminder, in about a half an hour, the Open Enclave webinar, Open Enclave topic for the CCC webinar will begin. And I would encourage those of you who are interested in that to move over to that webinar. And so we'll see you in half an hour.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Bye, all.
Cheers.